Good evening, everyone. This is a conference meeting of the City Council of the City of Orange Township, held in Council Chambers, City Hall, 29 North Day Street, Orange, New Jersey, on Tuesday, September 17th, 2019, at 7:02 p.m. Roll call. Councilman Coley?
Present.
Councilman Jackson?
Here.
No, that's in the regular meeting. Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Here.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Present.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Here.
Council President Eason?
Here.
Also present, Joyce Lanier, the city clerk, Chris M. Hartwick, the business administrator, Gracia R. Montellis, the city attorney, Marty Mays, Planning and Public Works Director, Marlon G. Towns, Legislative Research Officer, Lisette Sanchez, Record Support Technician. Please be apprised, anyone wishing to discuss agenda or general items shall sign one book. Each person signing the book will be allowed to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. The requirements of NJSA 10:4-9 et sec, the Sunshine Law, has been met. A notice of this meeting was published in the Star Ledger on July 5th, 2019, and in the record transcript on July 11, 2019, posted on the bulletin board in City Hall and filed in the office of the city clerk. We're going to switch the agenda around. The auditor is not here currently. He's on his way, so we're going to skip right to the discussion about the resolutions and ordinances on tonight's agenda.
Council. Anybody have any resolution or ordinance they'd like to discuss?
I think it's 329. Can you just explain that a little bit, Mr. B.A.?
329.
Yeah, 329, 319.
Sure. There is a general accounting standard that was published in 2018, which requires an actuarial report if you have any portion of your health care insurance that's self-insured. And it's basically to attest to the fact that we're doing the appropriate retiree drug subsidy.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
Excuse me, Council President, yes, I have something. 307-2019. I see that we should be waiting for the Public Works contracting, the PWCR, and we wonder if the city has received that.
Which resolution?
307-2019, resolution authorizing the award for Central Park Fieldhouse project.
We're going to hold it.
Okay.
Is that all? Councilman Johnson?
Yes, I do have something else. 324-2019, it's a resolution authorizing an agreement between Orange and Extenet Systems. Do they have construction or erection site selected?
Yes.
And where is that site?
They've supplied us with a map. There's multiple sites.
Multiple sites?
It goes
Okay.
on poles. And this has already been approved by the BPU.
Okay.
So this is somewhat of a formality. We discussed this. I've discussed this with the council before. All these companies want a council resolution.
Yes.
But if you said no, they'd still have the right to do it.
Right, I hear you. These are cell phone sites?
No.
Repeater sites?
In the same vein, it's either
Okay.
that or it's a more robust Wi-Fi coverage system.
All right, thank you. I also have a question on, no, not that one. 327, that's a resolution authorizing the contract with Hudson Energy Services, just a description of the language. I see in the fourth whereas clause, the 25% of the energy will be green, and what is that defined as?
It's a standard that the state sets, so it's just compliant with the state standard.
Okay. No specifics on what that is, whether it be renewable energy or anything like that?
Well, there are specifics in the regulations, I just don't know them
Okay.
off the top of my
And-
head.
And I noted some here, but it didn't seem like 25% was the total of those, of that inclusion, but I suppose I can learn more later. Also, on the next to last whereas clause, it talks about favorable and less favorable terms. Can you talk about the favorable terms that we took advantage of?
Well, there's a 29% cost savings.
Yes.
So the way this works is you have very, very brief auction windows in the energy markets.
Yes.
And this was a result of deregulation that started a few years ago.
Yes.
So in our particular case, what this is doing is we pushed some of our services back to PSE&G, some of our light pole services. And we took other services and we took advantage of the bid that we got from Hudson,
Yes.
which gives us approximately a 29% savings, plus providing our energy in a green, renewable, or at least a percentage of it in a green renewable fashion. So those are the basic advantages.
Yes.
A 29% cost savings to a $600,000 line item in your budget is substantial.
I agree. I just wanted you to have that on the record so people would know. So Hudson Energy Services is a competitor of PSE&G?
They're a licensed utility in the state of New Jersey.
Okay,
It's difficult for me to say that they're competing for business
The same
in the
business.
same marketplace based on having better provider numbers.
all right. Thank you, Mr. BA. That's all I had, Council President.
Yeah, anyone else?
Hey, Council President,
Council-
I have one quick one, please.
Johnson?
Resolution 325, 2019.
Councilman Johnson, can I interrupt you? Can I finish, ask my question on 327? Mr. Hartwick, so we still will maintain public service and electric, right?
Correct.
So they will have a percentage, and so will Hudson.
Yeah, the way it works is the actual service provider is maintained as PSE&G. The commodity provider pursuant to this contract, a percentage of our commodity will be provided by Hudson Energy.
So in 3 years, when the contract ends, you evaluate it again? Because I know.
Oh,
Yep.
not only will we evaluate it again, we'll evaluate it again next year. We'll evaluate it on an annual basis to make sure that there isn't additional savings that can be achieved.
Or what happens if they decide to increase the amount?
This is locked in.
So they can't,
They can't increase the price. It's a unit price.
okay?
So even if our consumption goes up, the price per unit remains the same. So we should still be achieving the same savings, but on a pro rata basis.
And so in 3 years, you will look at it and. if
And
it-
we'll probably go back out into the auction marketplace and see what we can get.
Okay. Councilman Johnson?
Thank you, Council President. Through you to the BA, I'd like to speak, I have a question on 325, 2019. Since it was pulled at the last meeting, I didn't get a chance to ask anything about it. Excuse me. Just a basic question on how the administration felt as far as going forward with this company after we already had them in-house for, I guess, 2.5, 3 years or whatever it was. And the bid difference was less than $6,000 between the two companies. I just kind of get a feel if in fact, did the municipality, did it get enough feedback from the community that they were satisfied? Or how did you guys arrive at not making any changes?
Well, first, we did change the bid specs. The bid specs this year were completely different. There were multiple options that were bid that had not been in the prior contract.
Okay.
Second, this is a publicly bid contract under the local public contracts law, so unless you can throw out the bid for some non-compliance, you're required under the statute, and I'll defer to council, but my understanding is you're required under the statute to award to the lowest responsible bidder, meaning the one who bids the lowest price.
Okay.
So even though that difference may only be $6,000,
Yeah.
unless you have a reason that's a legal reason that would prevent you from awarding to that bidder, you're required. So while there may have been some issues that have come up, and we have discussed a number of the issues that were raised by the council and by members of the community over the course of this procurement process with the vendor, I expect that those issues will be addressed in the performance of their contract.
Okay, thank you, Council President.
Council
Yeah.
President?
Councilor Coley?
Yeah, while we on this, did they commit to more garbage trucks, or is it the same amount of garbage trucks that they are using now?
The number of trucks was specified in the bid specification. They have a time period within which they have to do the service. If they don't meet those time periods, then they wouldn't be in compliance. So we don't tell them, you have to have 150 trucks here on Tuesdays. We tell them in the bid specs that you can pick up the garbage between this hour, and you have to be done within that time frame.
That I understand, but one of the problems were that they never had enough, well, not never, but a lot of times they didn't have enough trucks in the sections of the city to accommodate the garbage pickup. So my question is, again, are they going to commit more resources, or their resources are going to stay the same?
Well, we'll monitor their performance, and if their performance doesn't meet the contract, then we'll meet with them to see what they're gonna do to meet the contract.
Council President?
Somebody else have a question? Councilwoman Williams?
I think I just got my,
I think you just got your answer.
right? Okay, I wanted to make sure that, that the vendor was here, but I believe they just walked in. But on another question, as we prepare, did we get the reports for 184, 2019?
So, I actually did look at the reports
Oh,
today.
I'm sorry. We moving on to something else?
I'm asking my questions.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I wanted to ask something on the garbage
Oh,
contract.
go ahead.
Anybody else have any comments on the garbage contract while we on that? One of the things is, my ward doesn't get picked up until in the afternoon. They were there late yesterday. We used to get it picked up early. I mean, it fluctuates, early in the morning, sometimes it's after 12. And I wanna know what is the reason for the delay, cause it usually should be out of there, I guess a little later, like 9 o'clock or
So-
8 o'clock, there comes the time. The other thing is when they pick up, and I watch, and I ride down the street, they always seem so rushed. They grab the cans and throw them in. If they drop garbage, they don't pick it up, and they're on to the next stop. And I'm wondering why they always seem so rushed that they can't take the time to do a good job. Because if you remember some years ago, when we signed this contract, they were supposed to have a broom and shovels on the truck. So if they spill garbage, they would sweep it up and put it on the truck. But now the guys just grab the garbage and run. And if they spill something, drivers take it off, so they're running behind to catch up with the truck, so they can get to their next stop. So I'm wondering, how do we change that with this contract?
So, all of those comments have been previously made, have been addressed with the owner of the company during this review process, and we will monitor the performance of the contractor. That's the best we can do. If they're not complying, and by monitor, what I mean is, if they're supposed to be in and out of an area within a specific time frame, and they're not, we'll follow up with them and determine why not. We'll address that issue. We've told them that they have to have brooms on the trucks. We've told them that they can't toss garbage cans, that they have to pick up spilled garbage, right? And that we're gonna be monitoring their performance.
My other question is, some years ago, there was someone that rode behind the garbage trucks. Is there any way that anybody checks to see when those garbage trucks come in the morning, that they do have a broom and a shovel on those trucks?
Well,
I
that's-
haven't seen any. So,
No, I mean, we heard your comment.
Yeah.
So we've addressed that with them, and they'll have a broom and shovel on the truck. And if they don't, then we'll address it with them again.
okay. Anybody
And we
else
will
wanna make-
assign somebody from DPW to do spot checks of the collection.
And I want to say last year, at the league, we put legislation on the books that said all of the trucks has to have flashing lights at the top.
Yeah, I wasn't here then, and I probably would have told you that you don't have jurisdiction to
But
do
is that
that.
something the owner is going to address? Because when the
Well,
weather
the owner
is
doesn't
bad,
have to address it because they're licensed by the DOT and the Environmental Protection Agency, and they have superior authority over a municipality to regulate their trucks. So you can put it on the books, but I can't enforce it.
No, she said at the state level, the league did it.
Right. I,
but can
So-
you just ask the owner if he would consider doing that? So that they're clearly seen in bad weather. Because you
understand
could
the
run up on
concern.
them and you won't even know they're
so they
there,
have to have working lights.
on the top.
Well, DOT requires them to be there on the top and in the back, so.
Well, is the vendor here? Why not we just say to him, I hope he's taking notes, if he's in the audience, that he needs to put some lights on the top of the truck. We won't bring him up, but just, that's one of the requirements the city of Orange needs, just so we don't have any fatalities and accidents. Councilwoman Williams?
Mr. Hartwick, 184, 2019.
So, I looked at the transaction trail today, and I had some questions, and the people that I needed to ask were not available. So I'm just gonna hold this until the next meeting, and I'll have the questions answered by then, and I'll be in a better position to actually address the reason we are holding it.
This is 184,
So
2019?
184 is gonna be held.
And I would suggest not only the business administrator go to those events, maybe we need to take a trip too, some of us, just to see what's happening.
And 307 we're holding, but did we get the law, or is the opinion ready?
Not yet. It's on my desk for review, final review.
Okay, and 327, the attachments, did you want to address the attachments for 327?
So, I asked, 327 is the Hudson Energy contract, right?
Yes.
So it's missing the BRC. And I asked that when you adopt, I'm asking you to adopt a resolution because I don't want to lose the pricing, and I'll provide the BRC within 30 days. There's a little bit of a difference of opinion as to whether or not a licensed utility in the state of New Jersey has to have a BRC. But whatever the answer is, we'll provide it.
Oh, you did that, you get,
Everything else was provided. Their license is provided, the pay-to-play is provided, the W-9 is provided. But if I don't move on this, I'm going to lose the savings because the auction window will have closed.
or either that, we could get a legal opinion to make sure it's clean.
Right.
So we ask our city attorney to give us a legal opinion?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Okay,
Moving on to matters of discussion.
I see that
Yeah.
Mr. McInerney has arrived.
he's here now.
Mr. McInerney. For the record, Director Matt arrived at 7:05, and Captain Padilla for the Fire Department, 7:09.
Madam President, members of the council, once again, I'm here before you to review the 2018 audit report, as I have in the past. I usually try to start out with just making you familiar with the audit opinion, and that is it's a qualified opinion, but in many ways an unqualified opinion. It's qualified only because of the accounting methodology that the state of New Jersey requires its municipalities to use. That's to say that we do not use general accepted accounting principles for our municipalities or our counties in the state of New Jersey. So when you read the opinion, you'll see that there is a qualification, but again, it's a statutory mandate that we do not do our accounting in conformity with general accepted accounting principles. And I will tell you, as somebody who's been doing these for an extended period of time, methodology used in New Jersey is really a fail-safe in the sense that when you recognize a revenue in our accounting system, you could only recognize a revenue when you actually receive the cash and actually, make the deposit. So there's a certain sense of reliability that your revenues are based solely on cash receipts. There's no other greater test that you can make on a revenue than actually receiving the cash. So that's a very conservative, if not the most conservative, way of recognizing revenues in any accounting methodology. With regard to your expenditures, you can, when you adopt a budget, that's your expenditure for the year. Your budget was roughly $69 million. That is what you're going to spend in the year. There's no changes to that. So you actually also, when you charge your budget, you charge your budget when an authorization is done. So if you vote on a contract, let's say a public works contract for $100,000, even though the services haven't been rendered yet, even though you haven't gotten an invoice yet, you've actually used that $100,000 up. It's been encumbered. So these two methodologies I'm talking about, one on the revenue side and one on the appropriation expenditure side, are very conservative methodologies that have, in my estimation, served our municipalities very well and our bondholders as well. So just getting past that, let's kind of move into the current fund. The current fund, as I've explained to you in the past, is our operating fund. That's our operational fund. And for the year on that, we've generated a statutory excess of $4,560,000. However, we anticipated in our surplus in that, included in that, is $4,750,000. So in one way, you could say that this year was a push. If we didn't have the anticipated fund balance in our revenue items, that number would be substantially less, probably in the range of $100,000 or so. So suffice to say that we put back almost as much into our fund balance that we took out. I will say that there were some deferred charges this year, emergency appropriations, which would have to be picked up next year, and those are added back, so that's part of the operational excess this year. Our fund balance this year was $5,041,342. Last year, our fund balance was $5,240,000. So there is a little bit of a difference, but not much. So we basically have maintained our fund balance between 17 and 18. In addition, in 17, just to remind you that we also anticipated $4,750,000 in fund balance. So in that respect, we kind of generated the same amount of fund balance in the sense I should say the balances are the same, and we utilize the same amount of fund balance in both years. As far as our revenues go, on our miscellaneous revenues, we actually collected out of $16,686,000 that was budgeted for the year, we collected $17,204,000. So that's $518,000 more than what was anticipated. And in our amounts raised by taxation, that amount was collected was $1,272,000 more. There was a slight deficit in our receipts on delinquent taxes of $165,000. But overall, we collected $1.6 million more than we anticipated in revenues. And that's in that statutory excess that I just spoke about. Moving out of the current fund, I'll just briefly mention we have trust funds. And the trust funds are nothing more, have no budgetary impact. They're nothing more than dedicated funds set aside where money's collected for a specific purpose and expended for a specific purpose. And we audit those to make sure that they're in compliance. To be honest with you, you'll see in the comments, we still have issues with our outside police in that we're running deficits in many of those accounts. I'll address that a little bit later when we look at the comments. But that's the trust account. It really has no bearing on your fund balance or your operational income. But moving on to the general capital fund, that's where we do our financings, that's where we do our capital improvements. And for this year, it's notable to let you know that debt service dropped. I shouldn't say debt service, actual debt, our bonded debt as well as our school promissory notes, put those two together and look at what it was last year compared to this year, and it was actually down $5 million. Now, that's pretty substantial. There was a note, there was a refunding bond ordinance done, at least up to the time of the audit, for $1.5 million, I believe it was. But as of the end of 2018, debt dropped by over $5 million, which is a good thing. If we move on to our utility, our water utility, we still have debt service there. Last year was $17,970,000. This year it's $18,960,000. It's a slight increase in the debt on the water utility, the capital fund. On the operational fund, we actually, there was an excess profit, if you will, of $1,149,000. Last year was $714,000, but in all honesty, we anticipated $1 million out of the utility fund balance in 2018. So if you take the $1 million out of fund balance that we anticipated in our water sewer operations, you really had a profit of $149,000, which is down from the previous year of $714,000. So that's important to note. My understanding when we had our exit conference is that there has been initiatives we'll see also in the comments that there's been initiatives to get better control over the billings there. Our vendor is really running our receivables and our collections, and it's difficult for the city to get certain information. So that's one of the issues that are going to be addressed this year. And again, not that the profits were overwhelming, but at the same time, it's liquid. And that's very important if you want to go out for debt, because when you want to go out for debt, if you don't have a positive results of operation in the sewer and water utility, that has a negative effect on your amount of debt that you can go out for. The fund balance in the water utility account is now $1,195,000. Last year was $1,045,000. So it's about the same, even though we used $1 million of it. So those are the major funds that we utilize, both the operating that I discussed, the trust funds, which are pretty much a wash, money in, money out, the general capital fund, which is your financing fund, where you do all your capital improvements and do all your accounting for your capital improvements, and also the water and sewer utility. When we finished up this year, I will say this, I've been before you many years now, and we've had an excessive amount of comments. I think the audit reports will reflect that in the past. I have to say this year was, we saw a marked change in those comments. Not to say there's not still issues, but we had 13 comments this year. We'd like to see that obviously less, but nonetheless, we were looking at some points in times 20 and 30 and even 40 comments at times. What we saw was, and again, we're sampling now. We're not looking at 100% of the transactions, but when it came to purchasing, we saw that all but for one bid, which it wasn't something done out of really ignorance. It was just something that was misinterpreted in the purchasing law as to whether or not it had to go out for bid. That was the postage contract, because it's done on a discount basis. We don't pay anything. We just get it for less. And so at the end of the day, that'll be resolved next year, but that was the only real issue that we had in purchasing outside of some confirming orders, which are invoices that are paid before the purchase order is signed and authorized. So what I'd like to do next, after just giving you that brief outline of the financial position of the, and results of operation for the year, is kind of go through the findings with you. All right, again, we only. in the
Mr.
police
McInerney, can
department-
you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry. Again, in the police department, we tested 25 employees. There was one employee that was outside of the salary range. And that's something that we'd like to see corrected, but it was one out of 25. In purchasing, as I said, we've had confirming orders on many occasions. Here, we had 3 out of 25. So that's still an issue that we'd like to see addressed in the purchasing department, although it's considerably better than it has been in the past. And the only other item in the purchasing department is that one contract that I spoke to you about, and that is the contract that was for postage, which with some difference in the opinion as to whether or not it had to go out for bid. We clearly believe, as the auditors, that it had to go out for bid, and the administration will put that out to bid this year if it hasn't already done so. Just to point out that the purchasing department, in terms of the samples that we've chosen and the samples we looked at, fared much better this year. There's a lot of different initiatives that have been made on the authorization side on purchasing orders, on making sure that invoices are attached to purchasing orders. So again, from our samples that we chose, we saw that there was a marked improvement in that area. This is the significant deficiency that we found also was on the police off-duty, which I mentioned earlier, and that we need to collect money before we go out and send police on construction responsibilities on our roads or on any projects that are being done by outside vendors. And what's happening is we're paying our police officers off-duty to provide those services, and at the same time, still waiting to get paid by the vendors who are the contractors performing those services. Whether it's road construction or any other type of construction that the city needs to have done that requires some logistical issues with traffic, we need to make sure. There are certain vendors, like whether it's Department of Transportation or PSENG, that always pay, but it's very difficult to get them to give a check up front. We see that throughout our audits in other municipalities. But on the basis of the other ones, I said that there was a negative balance from vendors of $433,000. That's what's owed. So that has to be made up, and if it's not made up, you're gonna have to appropriate that out of your operating budget and fill that gap if you don't get paid. And that'll sap out a lot of your fund balance. I said it was $5 million. This would take $4 million out of it, or take $4 million out of the results of operation. So that's an important point, and probably one of the more problematic things that we've seen this year. And again, that is consistent with audit comments in the past. So yeah. Now we move on to pilot revenues. It was just noticed that there were some material differences between last year's pilot revenues and this year's pilot revenues. We want to make sure there's more consistency in the collection of those. I'm not saying there's not receivables outstanding on some of them, but again, it's important that those are monitored and that the monies owed are collected on a timely basis. One of the other things that, the other comments, is something that is very difficult to do, but nonetheless, it's important for internal controls. Anytime basically when you go into your books and records, you have cash coming in and cash going out, and there's authorizations for that. But sometimes there might be a misclassification of an account or a need to make an adjusting journal entry to correct something or to actually post something, and we believe that there should be authorizations on that. People shouldn't just have the ability to go in and make a change in your books and records without a level of authorization from a higher up. So that's another comment that we've had, and I believe we've had that in the past as well. There are a number of grants still outstanding too, grant receivables that have to be looked at, and other grant reserves that we should review. I know a couple years back, or a few years back, we had a lot of grant receivables that we were not going to collect, and the city made an adjustment to write those off. It was a hit to fund balance. That was close to $1 million. And all we're saying, it's nowhere near that issue now, but still, the city needs to go back and take a look at those and make sure that the grants receivable on the book are actually collectible. Sometimes you'll have a grant receivable on the book, let's say for $50,000, and you didn't collect any of it, and then you have the reserve against that grant for $50,000. It just means that if you're not gonna get the grant or exercise the grant, you just have to match the two up and eliminate them. There were some issue with, bank reconciliations, being done on a timely basis. And I think that had to do something with, some, issues in the finance department with the CFO or other people down there, that bank reconciliations have to be done on a consistent basis and on a timely basis. One of the other material weaknesses that we found was the payroll transfers. Payroll transfers are rounded up and made to this account from appropriations. Reserves and liability of this account total $1,078,000, including $463,000, which has not been adequately identified. So we got money in the account. Somebody has to go back and reconcile and find out what that money is tagged for. So that's another important point that we pointed out. As in the past, it's not an easy task, but as employees accrue accumulated sick and vacation time, that has to be accounted for. And so we have, our comment on it is that it was noted that the accurate records for employees' sick and vacation times are no longer being maintained. They were for a while, and for some reason, that is no longer being done. And that's important, because you have people coming to you, especially after we're looking at our police and fire, where some of those payouts at the end of their career are fairly sizable. We want to make sure that the city is paying out the required amount. Something on state board judgments, just a timing and when things were refunded. It's not a significant matter, but we wanted to note that. And again, I had mentioned with regard to water and sewer, the billings that are done by Suez, some of the detail of those billings are not available for the city. There's some credits made, really don't have any backup for them. So what we're asking is that the city establish lines of communication to enhance the financial reporting between these two entities, both the city and Suez. And then we were unable to, the city was unable to provide the information for the order to complete the UCC, Uniform Construction Code, annual report. It might have been done since we've been in there, that I don't know, but it's part of our comments. So yes, there's some real issues here that you want to take a look at. I'm not making light of any of these, but given the history of my tenure here, I can say that this is probably the best year that we had. And again, we're not sampling 100%. From our samples, what we found, that's typical of any year that we've come in here. It just was a better year in terms of some of the previous significant deficiencies, both in purchasing and other areas that seem to have been, decreased.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McNamara. Anyone have questions? Any questions from council?
Council President,
Yes, Councilman Williams.
Mr. Mapp, I have some questions, but, because it's more of the corrective action of the things he noted. Would you rather for me to wait for you guys to address the corrective action and then see if that answers the question?
I can't answer the corrective
No, I'm
action.
asking Mr. Mapp.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. McInerney.
Major and Map Director Finance. There's no time like the present.
So, okay. And Mr. Hartwick as well, what happened with the sick time and everything? How did we get off track?
That's a very good question. I can tell you that each department has a responsibility to make sure that sick and vacation time is maintained and is provided to the finance department. That is an issue that has to be addressed, and I know that the BA and myself, finance, we've had conversations about that. And we're trying to work with the departments to basically ensure that they provide that information. The police department, the fire department, all have a responsibility to maintain those records and to ensure that finance has those records so that Prime Point can be updated.
Okay. But in terms of our hardware, the scanner and all that stuff is working?
Well, in front of you, and I know you just got it this evening, because that's the way we do it, this point is addressed in the corrective action plan, and it specifically talks about the utilization of Prime Point, which is a human resource, time, and payroll management system. In order for it to work as a centralized collector of people's time and attendance, people actually have to use the scanners. And we have had a problem on a department-by-department basis. We don't have that problem in this building, in any of the employees who work in City Hall, who are covered by the collective bargaining agreement, or who work in City Hall and are not covered by the collective bargaining agreement. We've had instances in this building where people have not scanned in or scanned out. We address that in the system. But 100% compliance with use of the Prime Point system has not yet been achieved. When it is achieved, the time will be centralized and this comment will go away. You're going to see when you read my corrective, or our corrective action plan, that the last sentence says the city council should adopt a resolution or an ordinance amending the employee handbook to require all employees to utilize the Prime Point system as instructed by administration. Right now, you do not have a requirement in your employee handbook that says that they have to scan in and scan out. If I had that, then I can go to the various people and indicate that they're not doing it and they're not in compliance with the handbook.
Councilman Williams, can I just
Yeah.
interject here? Mr. Mackin, are you gonna stay till this is over?
Yes, I'll be glad to. But
Because
can I make-
what I want to say is, and I know the question was asked, can we let the village administrator go to the corrective action plan? Because the question you just answered is in the corrective action plan. Then after we go through both of those, and then the council can ask questions, if it is not covered in the corrective action plan, because right now we're being redundant. So is it okay with the council that we let him do the corrective action plan? Mr. McInerney is gonna hang around, Mr. Mapp is here, then anything that's not clarified, we will ask at that time.
Yeah, Council President, if I may ask one question to Mr. McInerney first. And this is just regarding the comment that it is in his letter at the beginning of the report. And you'll see what I mean. It's just setting the stage at least for what's coming with the corrective action plan. If I may, Mr. McInerney, I see that you have a comment that the audit was performed, but it does not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the city's internal control. And I understand that the corrective action plan addresses those things, but we can infer, can we infer the level of the effectiveness of these controls based on your findings and recommendations?
Well, let me explain that. There's two opinions that could possibly be given in any audit. One, our opinion is that the audit financial statements reflect correctly under the the accounting methodology that we use, the financial position of the city and its results of operation of not only the current fund, but the other funds as well. When it comes, there's also another engagement that can be you can be engaged for, and that's a total test of internal controls. You go through that when you do grants, but you don't do a internal control audit itself on this. What you do is test internal controls for the to come to the conclusion that internal controls are satisfactory, that you can rely on the numbers so that you can attest to the financial position and the results of operation. But it's not as extensive as an engagement that would be for an audit of internal controls. Be much more different than what we do, what the engagement is here for the audit report.
That would be a separate and more
Much more,
comprehensive inquiry.
yes.
All right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Madam President, if I could make one other point that I failed to make when I was up here before, and that's the tax department. As you know, last year, there was a number of issues that we had, and we even had some levels of disclaimer or qualifications because we couldn't rely on some of the numbers in 17 from the tax department. That has totally been revamped. And we have no comments on the tax department this year, where we had 10 last year. Okay, so and that's where the money's coming in from. But all of the liens, all of the tax collections, everything, with the new people that were there, from the consultant that came in, yes, as I said, not one.
All right, thank you.
Glad to hear that.
Right. Mr. Hartwick, are you ready
We are,
to do the corrective action plan?
Mr. Keisha Hubert and Mr. Mapp.
One of the things that I want to make reference, or I want to make a comment on, and you've heard from Mr. McInerney, the auditor, about the improvements that occurred in the 2018 audit. And we brought on board Takesha Knight as the controller, not Knight, Takesha Hubert as the controller. And she was instrumental in the coordination amongst all departments and assembling the information so that it could be provided as requested by the auditor. So I want to bring that to your attention and thank her for the work that she did in coordinating this, as well as her being instrumental in the corrective action plan that will be presented by her this evening.
Hello, good evening. I'm Takesha Hubert, the comptroller. So for the 2018 corrective action plan, I will be presented. So as Mr. McInerney stated, last year we had 31 comments. This year we're down to 13. So for payroll, one of the comments was that an employee was overpaid. After further analysis with the payroll department, this employee was not overpaid. In fact, the employee longevity didn't start till August versus the beginning of the year. So that was the difference of the calculations. Another payroll comment we received was that we don't reconcile our payroll account on a timely basis. So now we're going to reconcile it on a monthly basis. And at a minimum, the Director of Finance will review those quarterly and monthly during the last quarter of the year. For our purchasing department, one of the comments we received was in regards to confirming order. Last year, we received confirming order. 20 of 40 purchase orders were confirming. This year, we only had 3 of 25, so that's a decrease from 50% to 12%. So last year, we had a training with all the department heads and staff who's responsible to enter requisitions and purchase order into admins. We plan to repeat a similar session this year so we can further reduce the confirming orders. Also, another comment we had was in regards to the bid. We had a vendor for the postage that we felt we didn't need to go out to bid, and McInerney felt we did. So now we're gonna do, during the budget process, we're gonna review all expenditures from the previous 3 years and make a master list of all the contracts and make sure those are compliant with the local public contract law. And then thereafter, we'll add any new contracts to make sure those are also compliant. off-duty. As Mr. McInerney stated, for off-duty, there's approximately 433,000 that's not collected. So the ordinance 10-2002 requires that before any assignment of off-duty police officers, that we get payments from the vendor and hold it in the escrow account. Only exceptions to this rule is utility emergency. However, that hasn't been the case, so between now and December, the law department, along with the finance department, will go ahead and try to collect on these outstanding balance, and any items that we feel that is uncollectible, we're gonna suggest that we write it off. Also, the administration is exploring a software to automate the collection and payment of off-duty police. Pilot revenue. We've created a master list of all the pilots, and the master list is maintained on a shared drive that has access between the tax collector, the tax assessor, and the finance office. Currently, the quarterly bills are prepared in the finance office and sent to all of the pilots. Going forward, we're charging the tax assessor, the tax collector, and the planning department to notify the finance department and each other of any new pilot agreement. And all the pilot billing and receipts will be reviewed by the director of finance. Journal entry authorization. So, comptroller, myself, I will review and approve all proposed journal entries on a daily basis prior to posting it in the journal ledger. And on a monthly basis, the CFO and the director of finance will review and approve those, as well as any journal entries that's greater or equal to 50,000 has to be approved by the director of finance with a notice to business administrator prior to the posting in the general ledger. Status of the grant. So the finance department, along with the appropriate department in the city, will review all the old grant receivable and determine the feasibility and make recommendations to the business administrator. For the cash reconciliation, we're gonna perform each month within 10 days in the subsequent month, the reconciliation of all the bank accounts. Then any disposition of unreconciled items should be brought to the attention of the CFO and Director of Finance immediately. And we're also taking the appropriate step to cancel all stale dated checks that our bank will not cash. Accumulated sick and vacation time. So currently, we have a software called PrimePoint that we use for time and payroll management. We want to require all employees who are responsible for timekeeping to be properly trained on the software, but also to require all employees throughout the whole city to scan in and scan out through PrimePoint. And we ask that the city council adopt a resolution or ordinance amending the employee handbook to require all employees to utilize PrimePoint. The refund of state board judgment. So the city has notified the state to update their contact records to ensure that all the judgment will be received by our current tax collector. Previously, they were sent to other individuals that's no longer with us, so that caused the delay. For the water utility, the city has assigned new staff to the water operation, and those staffs are tasked with streamlining the billing, collection, and the account management process. Also, Suez has assigned additional staff to manage the city bills. So the city and Suez are in communication to modify the existing operation agreement so that we can bring the Suez software and our software to be more compatible so they can communicate with each other. And in regards to the UCC annual report, we will submit the 2018 UCC annual report via the state website. Questions?
Council members, you have any questions?
Council President,
Councilwoman Williams?
through you to, I'll wait till Mr. Hartwick come back. Well, both questions are from Mr. Hartwick. You okay? You don't say anything?
Councilwoman, you need, Business Administrator to answer your question?
Yeah.
Well, in the
I'll-
meantime, while he's out there, does
Okay.
anyone have any questions for Mr. Mapp?
I
Or-
just have one, Council President.
Yes, Councilman Cole.
The BA, he brought it up, and Ms. Hubert, she just mentioned it again. I don't know if we can do it right now, but I make a recommendation that we go forward with amending the employee handbook, making it so that all employees scan in and out, so we can get a better control of the time.
But-
I don't know if we can make that recommendation now that the ordinance be
Let me ask the question,
drafted.
because we face this every day in the schools district with the amount of employees. Everybody can scan, and in fact, we have that. But what if an employee does not scan in? Who monitors to see whether that employee is off, on vacation, or they just didn't scan in that day? I think that's the piece, the link that's missing. You can require everybody to scan in, but how do you really know whether they're on vacation, they're on sick time? So who's gonna be responsible to making sure that that is input into Prime Point?
So right now, every single department takes attendance on a daily basis and forwards those attendance reports electronically to my office and the Personnel Department. So I know on a daily basis, everybody who's out sick, everybody who's out on vacation, everybody who has taken a personal day, and we check that against the Prime Point entries.
Once you
not the
get the
issue.
report, who enters it that day on a timely basis? Because I know
When you
sometimes
scan, when you scan into Prime Point,
right,
it is entered in automatically to the report.
And
If
that's
you are
fine.
not scanned in, then the department head or the person responsible for attendance in the department is responsible to follow up with that employee to determine whether or not they didn't scan in, if they have a personal day, which they can check across the attendance sheet, if they had a vacation day or a sick day. So those controls are in place. Those are not the issues. The issues have to do with certain departments not wanting to scan in and not wanting to scan out.
wait a minute, let's go back to what you just said. Because,
And by the way, meaning absolutely no disrespect, but this level of operational inquiry is completely inappropriate.
also, we can't ask questions about, no, I'm just asking about the process. We're not talking personnel, I'm just asking who, in the company I work, we check the tape every day. So if an employee's missing, we follow up to say, call the department chair, where is that person, were they there that day? Oh yeah, I was here, I forgot to scan in. Does somebody do that on a daily basis in City Hall?
So currently, if you want to request a personal vacation or if you call out sick, you have to put it in Prime Point. If you're calling out sick the day of, you have to let your department head know. So in the instance that if the person's on a personal date, the system already has it, so there's no need to scan in or out. If you're on vacation, the system already has it because the
Correct.
department has to approve it.
But, and to Councilman Kohler's point, I agree with what he said, but I think we legislate a lot of things that is not followed through on, and we can legislate, but if we don't put the resources behind and the effort and the policy in place that requires that that is done on a daily basis, then if we legislate it, it ain't gonna matter one way or the other. That's all I'm saying. That's
Right,
all I'm
and
saying.
in this instance, it's actually backwards, right? We've put all the policies in place, we've put the software in place, we've put the alternate paper backup requirements in place, and what we don't have in place is a statement of policy from the city council that every employee is required to use the system. And I mean every employee, including me.
When we initially contracted for Prime Point, didn't we legislate that?
No, all you did was adopt a resolution approving the contract.
But we also had a policy piece to that. I don't know whether we legislated, but there was a policy piece to that. That stated what employees would be required to sign in and which ones wouldn't, and how you would handle it moving forward. But I'm not gonna belabor that point tonight, because we need to discuss that offline, is how we're gonna move forward. Anybody else have questions?
Council President,
Yes, Councilman Williams.
I'm gonna stay right there. So what's the, Mr. Hardwick, just got a couple questions, but what's the fail-safe if the machine is broke? How do you deal with that?
So we take mandatory attendance. So every department is responsible for recording the attendance on a daily basis and reporting it to me and to the personnel office. And I put that in place specifically so that we would know, we would have a paper backup in the event the system went down.
And is there like a grid or something somewhere that you can see, I have 10 machines and one is offline or something? Can you,
We know in finance automatically whether or not a machine is offline.
Okay.
And we have the scanning machines in the fire department, Brook Alley, the police station, and this building.
okay. And, because it's not just one machine, it can go to any machine.
Correct.
Right, got you.
And in fact, we have employees who report in who actually work out of this building, but because of their hours, they actually will scan in and scan out of a 24-hour building.
Got you. My next question would be about the pilots. And during the amendment hearing, Mr. Felder asked a question about monies due to the county. And it was also noted in the notes that it appears that we're not paying the county. Is that one and the same? And what are we
Yeah,
doing?
and it was also noted during our local finance board hearing on the budget and the waivers. I'll tell you what I told the local finance board. I've been in discussions with the county about a global resolution. As far as I know, I think I'm the only municipality in Essex County that's currently in negotiations with the county over this issue, but I could be wrong. And we're going to, I believe, come to a resolution that addresses this issue on a going-forward basis.
Okay.
And cleans up the past at the same time.
Okay. That's it for now.
Yeah,
If I may, Council President?
yes, Councilman Jackson.
I was gonna ask a question for each one, but I see that I have a general theme, is, one thing that the audit has provided in its recommendations is an opportunity for us to identify, what our obligations are, who is obligated to have, performed certain acts prior to the audit, and who may be obligated based on the, corrective action plan, what they should be doing, to implement this plan. Would you say, based on these corrective action plan, that appropriate people have been identified for further training if they made mistakes, or also for accurate assignment of obligation to implement these plans? Because I want to make sure that people know what they're supposed to be doing.
You want to respond to that? Or that wasn't a question?
So, there's a couple, let me unpack that.
Sure, thank you.
So, first of all, I can't stress enough the fact that there is a substantial improvement before you, right? I mean, last year it was 31 comments, the year before it was 38. The year before that, it hovered around 40. So you don't turn that ship around on a dime.
Certainly.
And we are making significant progress. I suspect, based upon the comments that we have this year and based upon the changes that have been implemented by the administrative team, including the Director of Finance, the mayor's office, all department heads, that the number of comments will be substantially reduced again next year. You can't just put a policy in place, right, in the corrective action plan and not have a plan to implement it. And I think that we've addressed that. We addressed that 2 years ago. We got more granular in our corrective action plans. We followed up with things like training sessions on procurement issues. assignment of personnel for time and attendance, a review of our grants, a grant compliance program. So those are all things that have been rolled out and ultimately end up in a reduction in your comments. So yes, we have a really good idea of who's responsible. Ultimately, I'm responsible for all day-to-day administration, and I have to hold the administrative team responsible. And we've moved substantially in that direction. So I expect that from 13, we'll be down in single digits. And as we move forward, it would not shock me if we got down to 0.
Well, thank you for
That's
that
the goal.
answer. I look forward to further progress. I had another question, if I may. And this is regarding the specifics, the off-duty issue. I heard that there may be an option where we have to write certain expenditures off. And I'm wondering, do you have an idea of what that amount might be? Because I see 433,000. I presume that you might be successful in collecting some of that.
So we had prepared a resolution, and then we reconsidered the resolution. Resolution wrote off over $100,000, correct? 103. And most of those balances were more than 2 years old.
Go back to 2012.
Right.
Boy.
So this is a recurring problem, and in order to deal with it, what we decided to do internally, and I think it's reflected in the corrective action plan, I spoke with the mayor, I've spoken with the city attorney, and we're going to turn those delinquent accounts over again to the city attorney's office for follow-up in collection efforts. If it's determined after a period of time between now and December that some of those items are not collectible, then we'll return here with a resolution on those items in December. In the meantime, collection efforts on the more recent items have already begun. And the number that Mr. McInerney recited during his presentation was deadly accurate during the time that he took that snapshot. That number has been substantially reduced by collection effort. So that's why we targeted the older balances, some of which are for entities that are no longer here and doing business.
All right.
Councilman Coley?
Council,
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to like echo just a comment of the BA. We reduced our comments down to 13, which is good. But this corrective action plan, how long have you had these actions in place? All year or just part of the year?
Part of the year, because we just finished the audit not too long ago.
Okay.
But some of them actually that are in the corrective action plan were actually started either at the end of last year or the beginning of this year.
Okay. All right, that's good. I'm just glad to see the positive progress in reducing the numbers of the comments. Thank you.
Councilman Wooten?
This is regarding the off-duty amount as well. So it says that you're gonna ensure that these accounts are run properly, but this ordinance has been in existence since 2002, right? So obviously, we haven't insured it, so what's gonna change now?
Well, here's the very basic answer to that question is that the delinquencies that predate 2017 were mostly accumulations without an escrow. So we would assign police officers, they'd go out and do the work, we'd then bill the contractor wouldn't pay. We had a police officer who worked the off-duty, we had to pay them, we end up with a delinquency.
Right.
The only entities that are currently not required to post an escrow are utilities, as were mentioned, and emergency jobs. So we have cracked down on the escrow requirements. However, there is still an issue where certain people get involved who are not supposed to get involved in the fact that police officers haven't been paid. So in other words, if the police assign a officer to a job without checking with the finance office over whether or not the escrow has been posted, that's not our fault.
Right.
And then the police officer doesn't get paid. And then we have to pay them because it creates a union issue, right? So if people follow the process, it works. It's when people go outside the process that we end up with a delinquent escrow account. And so we've put in policies, we've talked to the police. I think they have, I am confident, based on my conversations, that they have a better handle on it and are following the escrow rules.
And one of the things that the business administrator, one of our biggest culprits is the utilities, because you can't collect escrow for them.
Right.
So sometimes it takes a long time to get public service and Verizon to pay their bills, because they always say they didn't get this or they didn't get the other. So that's one of the, but you can't stop giving them service, because a water main breaks, you gotta send some cops out to make sure that the residents have water and things of that nature. But one of the things I wanted to ask Mr. Matt, what is a stale check and why do we have them?
Council President, a stale check is if we issue you a check and you have held on to the check for more than 6 months without cashing that check at the bank. So it is now over 6 months old, it is stale dated, and most banks don't cash checks that are that old.
So that means we gain money instead of losing money, right? If I don't cash the check.
We don't gain money, but I think one of the things that we can do, we are required to escheat those kinds of checks to the state. But I think an alternative is that we can create a reserve account, a liability on the books for those items, and clear all of those items so that they are removed from our bank reconciliation.
Okay.
And we could say that we can simply write those things off, but in reality, those are obligations that the municipality owes to those respective individuals or companies.
But that doesn't go into that system I say, what's that new thing about found money?
Unclaimed money?
Uncollected revenues, right?
You might have heard that the auditor said that there are some things that we disagree on. There are just some things that we disagree on.
But the problem goes away with the implementation of the corrective action plan that addresses that point, right? We do the bank reconciliations, we identify stale items. Once the bank considers it stale, we cancel it, right? And then we address it from an accounting perspective. It's simple.
Okay.
Council President,
Yes,
so
Councilwoman.
one last question.
Sure.
So of the 433K, so am I to assume that most of that, the most recent of that is utilities or
No,
not?
I didn't pull a transaction report today, but I did pull a transaction report last month. And that number has been reduced well below, if you take the 103 aside, put that aside, because I don't know that we'll ever get that back, that number is below $100,000.
Okay.
And almost all of that delinquency is PSE&G and Verizon.
Okay,
And eventually, I'll get on the phone with the PSE&G rep, and they'll walk in a check.
all right, thank you.
And I want to thank the business administrator for the efforts, because we were working on that for how many years now?
Many.
And we're finally getting a handle on it, yes.
I just have one last
Councilman
question,
Go.
Council President, I guess to the Finance Department or the BA. How often does the Finance Department send over the current list of accounts to the side job coordinator at the police department?
I candidly don't know the answer to that question, but I can find out.
Okay. Because I'm thinking, should it be bi-weekly, should it be monthly, just so we can keep like a, like a running log on?
Actually, it's a little reversed, right? Because sometimes the police find out first about the job, or Public Works Department, so they should be the ones notifying the side job coordinator of the need for an escrow. before somebody's assigned.
Right.
And that's more often than not, that a police department is aware
Correct.
of the request for off-duty services.
And they do have a coordinator in headquarters here in City Hall.
The council president, if I may?
Yes, Councilman Johnson.
Since we're on this topic and everybody's chiming on it, we have a pretty robust road improvement throughout the city, which we have multiple vendors all over town. Are we gearing towards having 100% of all those vendors participate in this escrow account?
Actually, those are our vendors, right? So if I were to put into the contract that they have to supply the police services, I'd have to go through the whole reimbursement, and they just add it to their bill. So I just provide the police services directly, and that comes out of the salary and wage line, because that's a city improvement project, not a private contracting project.
Gotcha. All right, I just wanted to make sure I understand. Thank you.
Council President, Ms. Hart,
Councilwoman
the handbook, is that a negotiable, do you have to sit down with the unions? Is that a negotiable item?
It depends on what's in the collective bargaining agreement and what is in the handbook. So I've done a review of all of the collective bargaining agreements, memorandums of agreement, and arbitration decisions, and nowhere is the issue of scanning in, scanning out for purposes of attendance or time management addressed, which means it's a management prerogative, and we can address it first in the handbook, and then we'll inform people.
And then the second part, is that system also set up for safety as well? For instance, if you were to do a fire drill or something like that, would you be able to pull that report to say that these are all the people that are here, grab this, and whoever the fire marshal is, get that list, da-da-da-da-da?
We would be able to do that.
Okay.
We haven't done that, but the system is capable of running a report to tell us who's here and who isn't.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, and
And I think one of the things I had requested to last year, we probably need to do a fire drill here one night.
We did do one last year. Was it last year?
I don't remember.
You weren't here. You were on another fire drill. It might have been the first year I was here, but we'll speak to the director. There's a couple of other things we need to do before we do the fire drill.
I know, because I'm looking at one.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
And one more question. So,
yes,
just, whatever you agree and don't agree on, that, the unclaimed funds, because sometimes it is funds that, checks and things that people didn't pick up from local agencies all the way to the state. When you participate in that, does that take it off the books? Is it?
I don't exactly remember how it works. I'd have to look.
Okay.
If you escheat money to the state, yes, it comes off the books. We no longer owe that to those individuals. You may know that from time to time, you might get a call from someone who says to you that I saw your name on this unclaimed
In the paper,
list.
yeah.
I've been waiting for that phone call.
And so that money resides at the state.
Because they have a whole department that deals with that, right?
And they send you an application. If you do that, they will send you a form to fill out to claim the money, and then they will send you a check.
And
So
I- and
if
I-
we escheat money to the state, the person to whom that check was originally made out can't come to the city of Orange
Right.
and claim that you owe him or her.
But it
money.
becomes like an annual clearinghouse that at a certain time you send this and to this agency at the state.
I think the state has enough money already.
All right, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, anybody have any questions for Mr. McInerney? Mr. McInerney, thank you very much for coming out. And, get home safe. Okay, we're gonna move the agenda.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Councilwoman Williams and Councilman Johnson. Do
All in
you-
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 8:22 PM.
I don't think we need a break, because we just had a 15-minute one, right? So we're gonna move forward? Okay.
This is a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Orange Township, held in Council Chamber, City Hall, 29 North Day Street, Orange, New Jersey, on Tuesday, September 17th, 2019, following the conference meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag
Roll call. Councilman Coley?
Present.
Councilman Jackson?
Here.
Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Here.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Present.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Here.
Council President Eason?
Here.
Also present, Joyce Lanier, the city clerk, Chris M. Hartwick, the business administrator, Gracia R. Montillis, the city attorney, Captain Padilla, the fire department, Adrian Matt, finance director, Marty Mays, plan and public works director, Marlon G. Towns, legislative research officer, and Lisette Sanchez, record support technician. The requirements of NJSA 10:4-9 et sec, the Sunshine Law has been met. A notice of this meeting was published in the Star Ledger on July 5th, 2019, and the record transcript on July 11th, 2019, posted on a bulletin board in City Hall and filed in the office of the city clerk. There are no minutes to be approved. Reports. Monthly revenue collection. The clerk's office for the month of August collected $49.72. The Orange Historic Preservation Commission for the month of August collected $140. There's no constable reports. OPA reports. We received 86 requests in August, 77 were complete and 9 are pending. Council reports.
Does anyone on the council have any report that they would like to make at this time?
Council President,
Yes, Councilman Williams.
Finance Committee.
We're not gonna read it. Everybody has a copy.
Oh, Council
So if you
President,
wanna
we have
make some
things-
comments on one piece of it, that's fine.
Okay.
But everybody can read their own copy. Okay?
The Finance Committee, Mr. Hartwick, can, you discuss the hospital? And just for, point of reference, that there has been an old video that has come out and surfaced about the state of the hospital, and I just asked Mr. Hartwick to address it briefly.
So, there has been a lot of activity in the last several weeks regarding the hospital. The city is engaged with both the owner as well as the entity and/or persons that hold the note and the mortgage on the property. Another whole, and this is the third time, round of summonses have been served on the property owner. By third round, the first round was over $300,000. The second intermediate round was over 150, and the third round, by the time it's finished, will be over probably 500, based on the reports I've been getting. The owner came in with Mr. Mays. We had a discussion about him hiring a 24/7 security company to patrol the grounds. And I expect that within the next 2 months, I'll be back before you to either request authorizations or to inform you of the current status of both the lien holder and the owner. In the meantime, we are engaged in negotiations with both parties.
Okay.
And I don't really want to go into significant detail about those negotiations at this time.
And then finally, we spoke about the vacant and abandoned properties and made a recommendation of possibly putting a bid out for outside, because the upkeep of these properties seems to be overwhelming
Yep.
in-house.
By the time we get to the 2020 budget, we'll be in a position to recommend, we're studying whether it makes sense to just put a bid together for the upkeep of those vacant and abandoned properties that are on our routine revisit list, because we're pulling resources from Public Works to do that. And if we go forward with the vacant and abandoned property ordinance, the fees that would be generated should more than cover the cost of a contractor. Plus, the cost of the contractor can immediately be placed into lien.
And you're gonna put lien on the property, right?
Right. So we're looking at that, and we'll be in a position by the end of the year to make a recommendation when we introduce the new budget.
Thank you, Council President.
Okay. Real quickly, while you're on those subjects, there was a young lady in City Hall the other day that I met, and she was here to talk about what's happening with the Y. Do you have any updates on that? When that development is gonna start, or?
So the administration will narrow down from the 5 finalists. We'll be requesting a best and final presentation, and we will evaluate that. And if we stay on schedule, we'll have a recommendation for a developer designation approximately the end of October. So because the second meeting in October is, I believe, on the 16th or the 15th, we probably won't get to the agenda, a council agenda, until November, first meeting in November.
Okay.
Council I'm sorry, I omitted one thing. Just retirees and reimbursements, if this budget passed, what would be the status of that?
So the changes that we referenced in the resolution wouldn't take place until the 2020 budget. The current budget has more than sufficient funding in that line to continue the process as it had previously. And it will also afford us the time to bring in the retirees and explain who falls into what category
Gotcha.
under the resolution that was approved.
And just before we move on, is anybody wants to speak tonight and has not signed the book? Would you do so at this time before we collect it from off the table? So if you're planning to speak and you have not signed, please go out and do it at this time. Move the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Fire Department, do you have a report tonight? Yes. Okay, you can come on up.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Deputy Chief Alvin Padilla. Madam President, can you please correct Madam Clerk on the title? I love you. Thank you. Director Douglas obviously couldn't be here. He sends his greetings and apologies for not being here. He wanted me just to let everyone know that he's working on a current fire prevention schedule that's going to address the school systems, the public school systems, the seniors, churches, as we do every year, October. The 6th to the 12th is Fire Prevention Week. If you all know the director, it's Fire Prevention October 6th until never. It never ends for us. So he wanted to thank, or I want to thank, actually, from the fire department, I want to thank the Mayor Warren, Business Administrator Hardwick, and Director Douglas for supporting, funding, and implementing this program. It has helped the fire department tremendously. It has educated endless amount of citizens in Orange, and we're seeing improvements as far as fires are concerned. We're adding this year is Sparky. They purchased a Dalmatian costume like they other communities do. So they're going to go out to the public school systems starting this year. We're having our second annual Seton Hall. The survivors from Seton Hall, there's 2 gentlemen that go around and give lectures on how to prepare going into college related to fire incidents. As of October 11th at the cafeteria at the high school between 9 and 11, you're all invited to come in. They will be speaking. It's a wonderful program they put together. EMS, just to let you know, so far, I mean, we stay on top of EMS because we've had previous many complaints. I'm kind of glad to say that we have no current issues or no complaints that have come our way. If you do have them, please call us right away. We have a form we fill out. We get right on top of it. So don't hesitate to call us if you have a concern with your constituents or any citizens. So basically, because we stay on top of the EMS issues, we are now training our firefighters to handle more medical calls than in the past. We probably respond to quite a bit of medical calls now. So we've taken a pretty proactive approach as far as training and getting them out there to help EMS when not available or when they're available, need our assistance. The 19 probationary firefighters, I'm glad to say, I'm happy to say that they just completed their 90-day evaluation. We expected some hiccups. From the past, we've learned, everybody's not perfect. No one's cut out to be a fireman, so we're very aggressive with the training and the training, and we're doing that for the regular guys, and we're doing that for the new young guys, the future of the Orange Fire Department. So we're on top of that. Number 8. Oh, thank you for the proclamation for Treza, Giuliano, and Detective Alvarez from New York. If you guys remember doing the 9/11 testimonies, he was a gentleman sitting in the front. He's since passed. You guys were graced his family with a proclamation from the city of Orange, and that speaks in volume for us. Reverend Police and Fire Chaplain Reverend Wilson from St. Matthew's Church. Let me tell you, we gave him a badge, and he hit the ground running. He's been at the firehouse. He covered all 4 tours. He brought in food. He brought in lunch. He knows how to get to us. He brought in lunch. He made himself available 24/7. He actually had us to add him into what we have, a notification system communicator. So anytime we get an incident, his phone's going to go off. He just doesn't realize he made a big mistake. But we do have him on a response plan. So in the event we have something that's traumatic, that we need some divine intervention, he's going to be our go-to guy. But he's doing an unbelievable job.
I don't think he sleeps anyway, so.
I've heard that. I've heard that. A lot of energy.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that Love of Jesus Church, this Saturday I'm working. They're actually coming to the firehouse, 26 members of the church. We're going to teach them CPR. We're going to teach them how to use a defibrillator. We're working on a program with a defibrillator company to try to put a defibrillator in every church. We'll train them at no cost to the churches. So as long as we're on duty, it's a free. When we're off duty, it's a different story. And we'll make sure we keep records, Mr. Hardwick.
Good.
Proclamation, just so that you know, with Suez, they've been replacing hydrants, putting in new hydrants. We're actually in close contact with them, and I can't remember her last name, but I call her Kit. Very on top of what's going on with our hydrants. We actually have a training coming up. All 4 tours are going to be training on a new hydrant, so that program is moving very well. And 2 more things, and I'll let you go. We had an emergency management meeting. White House Nursing Home has become what's called a pod, point of distribution center or site in the event of a pandemic. So if something happens in our municipality and we need to distribute any type of medication, White House Nursing Home, and we expect many more to join, like St. Mary's and so on, we can pick that site. They will deliver we pick up the medication, and then we distribute it from that site. So that's available to the city. And our OEM meeting, which we have monthly, he just wanted us to remind the city of Orange and the citizens and the council that storm season is not over as far as hurricanes and bad lightning storms. We still have a little ways to go. Hopefully we don't get anything, but obviously we're getting ready for the winter. We are in the process of working. I'm working with Raymond Wingfield, the coordinator, with Mr. Hardwick, with the mayor, with the director, the coordinators. We're working on the hazardous mitigation plan. That's going to identify your hazards in the city of Orange and is going to tell you how to deal with it. That's going to start pretty soon. The emergency operating plan is going to be updated. We have done a lot of drills with the St. Mary's White House Nursing Home. We are updating a lot of their plans. 98 High Street, we had a blackout there. We're working with them. So there's a lot of things that we're doing on the emergency management, and they're going to start hopefully getting caught up. State Police and the county has extended their olive branch to us. Anything we need, they said they're available, so they're a phone call away. More training for OEM, and we're looking into grant possibilities for the city of Orange on the OEM side, the emergency management side, that'll help with some emergency equipment, rehabilitation equipment, things when we have disasters. And PSE&G, just want to give out a number. I don't know if they changed it, but they gave out a number, 1-800-436-7734. That's for the public. If there's any public service issues, that's the number you call. They're pretty good. They gave us a training on that. And that is it. Thank you for your time.
One question.
Yes.
Can we get Sparky to walk in the parade on Saturday?
Not sure if the costume will be in yet, but if it is, I'll remind the director today. I'll text
We'd
him
love
over
to
here.
have him Saturday if the costume comes in.
What time?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
We should start
Okay.
moving it.
The fire department will be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the Orange High School.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I'll reach out to him tonight.
Okay.
Council
Thank you.
President?
You have a question?
Yes, Council, just any update on?
Deputy Chief will be there.
Deputy Chief, Deputy
I'll
Chief,
take, that's
Chief,
okay.
Chief, Chief.
That's okay. You're not alone.
Any updates on firefighter, Orange Baby that's at West Orange Fire? I know he's
Oh,
in rehab.
Mr. Holter, firefighter Holter,
Yes.
actually Captain Holter. He
Captain
was
Holter.
actually promoted before he was released from the hospital. Those who don't know, he was the gentleman that was injured in a horrible accident on 280. He actually is going to therapy right now. There are some complications, which obviously, due to the magnitude of the injuries, that's expected, but he's actually a trooper. He actually, and you just popped up my memory, he actually, day one, came to us to fill out the application for the West Orange Fire Department. We know him personally. Our guys have gone to the academy with him, but, you know, we're just praying that, you know, he's able to function normal, and we just got to leave it there.
Well,
There's
he's an
nothing-
Orange Baby, so just let him know we're thinking
Oh,
of
yes,
him.
I've heard, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Communications and petitions, there are none. Citizen comments. Pursuant to Section 4-10 of the Code of the City of Orange Township, each person addressing the council shall step up to the microphone, shall give his or her name and address in an audible tone for the record, and unless further time is granted by the chair, shall limit his or her address to 5 minutes. The public is expected to conduct themselves in a proper manner. Any derogatory, abusive, or threatening statements will not be permitted. The chair will immediately rule such conduct out of order and terminate any further comments.
Jeffrey Fell?
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld, a local businessman, an attorney, and a mortgagee whose local business address is 268 Main Street, Orange, New Jersey. As my custom, I've delivered a heads-up memo to the local governing body, the city attorney, the BA, city clerk, and the legislative research officer. I don't know really where to begin. On your agenda, it talks about Oprah. It only told you how many open items there are for the month of August. We're in a very unique situation where my Oprah requests are singled out and reviewed by the city attorney's office. I received emails where this from the city attorney, where he, to the city clerk, where they told her not to produce certain documents to me. In connection with the redevelopment of Main Street, a certain letter that was requested was not initially produced to me. It was produced to me subsequent. We have a problem. We don't even know how many open items there are since the first of the year. Besides Oprah, you have Open Public Meetings Act issues as the closed executive session meetings. One of the issues we had is last meeting, you went to a closed executive session for about 45 minutes with the defense attorney who's representing you in the federal investigation. The question is, when will minutes be adopted? I didn't say when they'll be posted, but when will they be adopted, those closed executive session minutes? Earlier, I asked, when will we're in a very fluid situation. Last week, the state, the local finance Division of Local Government Services issued again the calendar year 2019 best practices inventory. The question is, when will we have the public hearing on that? Because you recall last year, we had a public hearing that lasted about 3 minutes in December, and we were always promised to come back, that the audience would have an opportunity to talk about the answers from last year's best practices, and it never happened. But when you look at those best practices questions, look at what they're asking and what they're surveying, and how many of those questions are directed from actions that are resulting from this municipality. I asked, when will the amended user-friendly budget be posted? The best practices we talked about. We heard also about, you asked a question about the redevelopment of the Y. There's a predicate for that redevelopment. You had to re-adopt a redevelopment plan for the Main Street redevelopment area, because the planning board hasn't, we will officially adopt the resolution designating it at the next meeting, but you have to come back here. But also, there's a wrinkle. There's a lawsuit pending called Feld 19. You should look about that one, about how you acquired property while there was a lawsuit pending, how you issued bond anticipation notes when there was a lawsuit pending. What did you say in the disclosures when you went to South Amway Bank to issue those bonds? In my letter, I talked about willful blindness. It's an issue that's arising in all different levels. We cannot underestimate the federal investigation. People are entitled to transparency and accountability and adherence to the rule of law. I'll be leaving very shortly because I have 2 court hearings tomorrow. It's amazing that since his appointment as city attorney on July 1st, 2018, I have never met face-to-face in a meeting to discuss my litigation with your city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Fell. Tremont Place, are you still here, Yvette? Yes. Okay.
Good evening. Good evening. This is my first time here. My main concern today.
State your name for the record,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry. My name is Yvette Gray, 354 Tremont Place. My main concern today is the parking permit. I just moved here. I've been here a year, and I found out it's no parking on the street between certain hours. And my main concern is I have 3 vehicles, and my garage only fit 2 cars. So where's my 3rd car going to go?
Let me ask you, said Tremont Place has parking permit?
No, it's no parking permit, and that's my main reason here today, to find out the reason why Tremont Place doesn't provide parking permit for that particular block.
Right, you want to leave your name and your number with Mr. Hartwick? And he
Sure.
will-
It is.
Or is it Marty Mays? Who wants to return her call?
No.
That was
It-
Tremont Court.
I'll just give you my card.
Okay.
And you can come in and meet with Mr. Mays and Mr. Mobley and myself.
I spoke to Mr. Mobley over the phone 3 times, and he did provide us with a temporarily parking, which expired yesterday.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, now where do I park my 3rd car? Because I will receive a ticket because they come around between the hours of 2 and 6.
In the evening or in the
No,
morning?
in AM.
In the morning?
Mhm.
Okay.
Even when I have the temporarily parking, I was still receiving tickets. So I was constantly running back and forth up to City Hall just to find out the reason why, if I was provided a temporarily permit. So now the permit is expired, and I just really wanted to find out the reason why that particular block do not provide a parking permit for the residents there, because everyone on that block don't have a long garage. So
But they
I'm
do
one
have
of them.
garages and driveways, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can address it. I'll give you my card. You can make an appointment to come in this week or early next week. In the meantime, I'll check the ordinance because I know Tremont Place has been here at least once. I think it went full circle. I'm pretty sure that this is the street that we adopted it, then we rescinded it. So, have you spoken to your neighbors?
I spoken to my neighbor, I spoken to 4 of my neighbors, and their driveway is much longer than mine.
I just meant, have you spoken to your neighbors about the petition requirement from the neighbors?
I spoke to 4 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we can have this discussion and report back to the council on October 1st.
Oh, okay. So in the meantime, what I do with my 3rd car?
If you come in, I'll extend your temporary for 30 days.
Okay, so, I could set up an appointment tonight.
No. If you leave the license plate number, I'll suspend it,
Oh, okay,
all right?
okay.
But only for 30 days until it's addressed. Because this, you're gonna get this time and time again if we keep doing this. So I've been preaching about this for 3 years. So we have to come up with a system that works. The system you have doesn't work.
Right, you did say.
We just legislated that, didn't we?
Well, you've only legislated it in piecemeal, right?
Right.
The notion that, you know, we're going to provide parking permits for people who have 4, 5, 3 cars. You're gonna end up with cars all over the streets, and you're not gonna be able to deliver services. You're gonna have to look at this.
Okay. He will be in touch, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Paulette?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Paulette Rochester. I'm at 321 Elizabeth Street in Orange. My sister owns the residence, and I live there. And there's a tree that's really overgrown, and it's protruding in my window in my driveway. I know my sister has made a complaint, and she was told that I think they have like 6 months backlog. So I don't know. So I would like something
What's
to
the
be done
address?
to it, please. I'm sorry?
What's the address?
I
321
will,
Elizabeth Street.
yeah. Paulette, I will address that tomorrow. I just had the trees trimmed on Hawthorne, so,
Okay.
Mr. May, I think, if I'm not mistaken, something broke. So they will probably be out there hopefully next week when
Thank
they
you.
get the equipment repaired. But we've been doing the streets in Orange, in the North Ward, little by little. So hopefully yours will be the next.
Okay, thank you.
And, but they were doing, I think, one of the, what is that called, the bush cutter, something? Is it- Yeah, it broke the other day, so they gotta get that, where did Marty Mays go?
He's in the hallway dealing with the other issue.
Yeah,
Okay,
but, before you leave me your phone number,
thank you.
okay?
Okay.
All right.
And one more thing, the roads on North Day Street were very horrible.
Well, they're in the process of
Fixing-
remedying that.
Okay,
You know, they've been working on it the last couple of days, and a lot of it is tore up, but you're gonna see it get paved, so, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thank
we
you.
know.
and one more thing I can say for the police department, at North Day and I think Washington at the Three Corner Deli, I know they're doing a very good job, so I appreciate that and they're very quick response. Because a couple of weeks ago, I was home at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I heard a loud noise, arguing, like fighting, and by the time I jumped up, I saw the lights flashing.
Right.
So I just want to say thanks to them also.
Right.
And one more thing, leaf pickup. Do we have to call to make an appointment for leaf
Yes,
pickup?
on Tuesday, you
Okay.
can call. And Mr. Mays, who's back there in the yellow, can give you the number,
Okay.
and,
He wears that yellow vest so people know he's from DPW.
yes. And just give him 321 Elizabeth so he can get your tree trimmed.
Thank you.
I think you have an equipment repaired, right, Mr. Mays? Yes, so just, he's sitting right there.
Thank you.
Take him in the hallway and tell him everything you need,
Thank
and
you.
I will follow up with him.
Thank you so much.
All right. Gus? Mitchell. Quinn. Quinn.
You can state your name for the record.
Oh, good afternoon. Gus Mitchell, 214 North on the Street, Orange, New Jersey.
Okay.
For the past 2 years, my water bill and my sewer bill has been raised. with the understanding that the city intends to upgrade the water, the piping and the sewers and other things. I haven't seen any activities going on, so I would like to get an update on what's going on.
Mr. Hartwick will provide that to you. Just give him your name and phone number.
Well,
and he
Mr.
will-
Mitchell knows my office.
So what?
I said, Mr. Mitchell knows where my
So
office
you
is.
can, you
He's a
can make an
frequent
appointment, you
visitor.
can go to his office and he will provide you that data. All right, Mr. Mitchell? Anything else?
Yes, ma'am. My second issue is the street on North Center Street, just paved two years ago, and it's cracking up. Many places. The estimated cost for it was almost $500,000. I've tried to get answers from various directions, and nothing done. I want to know if there's a recourse that the city can take to have issues like this resolved.
Okay, Mr. Mr. Mays, you wanna,
Well, I think he probably has an answer, because this came up at the last meeting, so we've
Yes.
been working on this. You should probably let him speak on the record.
Hello, Marty Mays, Director of Planning and Development, DPW. I already spoke to him and told him that I'll have something for him next week. The engineer, I sent him out the last time we spoke, and the engineer is out because he got married. And he went out and did a report and everything. I just don't have it. He'll be back next Tuesday.
okay. Mr. Mitchell, so Mr. Mays will be in touch with you. You have his number, right? Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is it K&S? Paulie's? Is there someone here from Paulie's? If not, I think we have motion to close.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Williams, second by Johnson Jr. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Council comments?
Okay, Councilman Coley?
Yeah. I'll be real quick. Thank you, Council President. I just want to thank the Water Department for the upgrades to the fire hydrants around the city, particularly in the East Ward. I believe we have about 504 fire hydrants citywide, and they have been doing a good job at replacing the disabled and the older fire hydrants, and I'm glad to see that that is starting to happen. And I'm also, I mentioned earlier, I'm glad to see that audit comments are reducing. And the roof in the clerk's office, do we have an update as to when it's gonna be repaired or if it's gonna be repaired?
Mr. Hartwick?
Mr. Mays is going to speak.
Oh, Mr. Mays.
Marty Mays, Director of Planning and Development, DPW. There's one more thing that needs to be done to the roof, and I'm gonna try to get the contractor to be here next week. That's what we discussed, and the roof will be hopefully the roof will be wrapped up after that.
Okay, and while you're there, can you just give me a quick update on the status of the skate park at Colgate Park, please?
The status is that they actually poured the bowl last week, and they did a lot of grading. The fencing is gonna start there in a week and a half. They had some trouble with the fencing contractor, and all of the shade structures, benches, and everything should be going in about 2 weeks. So I'm hoping for completion in less than 30 days, if everything goes perfect. All the cameras have been installed, and it's a really relayed directly to the police department. And right now, we're viewing the cameras. A couple of the trees still need to be trimmed back, but we did also take about 5 trees out so that the signal could go through. So that's where we are with that. I heard what you said at the last meeting. I do have something prepared in writing that I'll share with the clerk to get to everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mason. And one last thing, Council President. As I, move around town quite a bit, I notice from time to time that we have traffic lights that are, not working. And I know that we have a lot of city employees and other people that see the same lights, that are not working as I do. And I don't know if people report these traffic lights that is not working to Public Works, but I just want to make a request that if our city employees or someone see these traffic lights that are not working, you see something, just say something so we can at least try and maintain the safety of our traffic lights that they provide for the residents. That's it, Council President. Thank you very much.
And while you're on that, High and the Main Street, we still haven't synchronized that light at Lincoln so that they can, because they're always in the blocking the traffic. I've been requesting that for 2 years, so that the traffic will move through there. Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Council President. I wanted to also put on the record how impressive it is that the administration has reduced the amount of discrepancies in our audit to the level that we currently have. It shows that, a lot of hard work was put in, and thank you for those developments and those that will come with the new corrective action plan. I just wanted to offer to citizens who are listening tonight my phone number and email address as an elected representative here in Orange. I'd like to hear more from people who have ideas about what they need from our government and what they would like to see, and how I might be able to help if they have anything specific. And my phone number is 862 364, 862, how could I forget my name?
That's okay.
862-240-3634. 862-240-3634. And my email address is cjackson@orangenj.gov. cjackson@orangenj.gov. If there are opportunities where you can get directly involved, I have appointments to certain committees, and if you're just interested in playing a role, finding more about our municipal government, or have something you'd like to share or find out, please reach out to me. Thanks so much, Council President.
Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, Council President, if I may, through you, ask our Finance Director, Mayor Mapp, come up to the microphone, please. Mr. Mapp, in addition to your Finance Director duties, you're also the town's qualified purchasing agent.
Yes.
And I've been on the council since 2014, and Mr. Mapp can attest that I'm always hard on, not just him, but him on finance, period. And I don't want to take and miss this moment to actually commend him for enduring the last couple of years when everything was really out of control, and sticking to him and the BA's game plan to actually start turning things around. I never want to always be one-sided when I deal with professionals, that I can be critical, but I can also tell you that I appreciate you actually doing what you said, that you was going to put your nose to the grind and work out and figure out how to get these employees at City Hall motivated, to have the vision that everybody works for the taxpayers. And the most critical department in City Hall is our finances. And we need to be on top of that. From the littlest purchasing pens and pencils to the biggest contracts, we need to hear that everything goes according to statute, correct? So I appreciate your effort,
Well,
Captain.
thank you, Counselor. Thank you. I'll pass it on to the department as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Williams?
Thank you, Council President. I just want to remind everybody that homecoming is this weekend, but I'm sure you'll be talking about it, so I'll let you talk about that, correct?
No, you can go ahead.
Homecoming is this weekend. It starts with an event on Friday. If council members have not received their ticket, we need to let the clerk know tonight because Ms. Alcantara is trying to make sure that we have tickets, but we have to know tonight. No ticket, no payment at the door. Correct?
Tell them the cost.
Okay. And then,
What's that? No ticket?
ticket for the event on Friday, for the social on Friday for
Oh,
homecoming.
meet and greet.
I was going to say,
No,
we
for-
don't get in the game for free?
No,
we
it's
don't.
not the game, it's the meet and greet for the celebration of 150th anniversary of Orange High School.
Oh,
And
okay.
Kerry Coler's buying a ticket and he's not going, so he'll donate it to you.
Okay. So the tickets are $50 and you have
Well,
to,
Council President, I have this other person that's named Kerry Coley, and we have been kind of, getting our act together, being two places at the same time.
Oh, okay.
so if you're,
You just
inter-
want,
go ahead.
go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
if you're interested, please let the clerk know tonight so we can let Ms. Alcantara know, because she needs to know. Again, there will be no purchases of tickets at the door on Friday night. They're very adamant about that. And then on Saturday is the homecoming parade, and we just heard that it commences at 10 a.m., starting at,
Orange High School. Anybody that wants to walk and participate, we're gonna walk from Orange High School to the Elks Club, where you will have performances by all of the participants. From there, after that's over, they're going to the Bell Stadium for the tailgating party. So it will be a big, big day. So they're asking everybody that graduated Orange High to come home. And if you're home, we need you to come to the activities. Mr. Jackson, you got your tickets, Councilman?
I will be purchasing my tickets as soon as possible.
Okay.
so the streets of Orange this weekend will be paved in orange, so please participate. This past week was the commemoration of 9/11, and we were not here to do so, but just as we all do, we reflect where we were that day, but also reflecting, listening to young people who were actually born and now 18 years old, and just to get their perspective on it. So again, to our first responders, to everybody who was in the area, in the different areas, just our continued prayers to the family, and we still have work to do. As many know that I'm fresh back from the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference, and the push was for Census 2020. I want to say that it appears that every session I went to, somehow they sent a message about Census 2020. That probably was the sub-message, that we have to be prepared, get counted. If we want to get our resources, the importance of doing it. One of the things, Mr. Hartwick, was that as a local elected body, that we should be in line with whatever work is going on, that we should still pass legislation on a complete count committee, which I'll be bringing forth next meeting. I have to get it from the office to ensure that the work is being done. We also had the privilege of taking 85 students from this area down on Thursday who had a civics day, and that was from Orange, East Orange, and Newark. And it was a New Jersey initiative out of Union County. They had 3 buses, and I know out of South Jersey they had 3 buses as well. And we look to continue to expand those numbers that our young people may be exposed. Mr. Hartwick, thank you. I came home and I know I sent you a text, and I was like, the house was cleaned on Central Place. This house that has been vacant and abandoned for a while. It really does a difference when these properties are kept up. And then last night at our meeting, I also noticed that there appears to be some movement on Main Street as well. So thank you, but can we also keep it up? Today on Hickory Street, I came out, they're paving an area over there. Back to the signage. The signage, we're not so you pulled down Hickory Street before you realized that they were paving and you were detoured, but there were no detour signs. So can we just work better on street closing notices and detours so people are not messed up, jammed up, right? Also, just as a clarion call, Veterans Day, Veterans Month we acknowledge our veterans in the month of November. This year, the City of Orange will be honoring the women in service. If you're a woman in service and you have served, please call our community service department so that we can honor you accordingly. Elections are coming also in November, and we have a local election for our school board. We're still in transition. I understand that the candidates have been announcing, and there will be some sessions coming up so that you can get to candidates. So keep your ears and eyes open so that you can be engaged in the vote and know who you're voting for. Mr. Hartwick, there's been a lot of news going around about the water issue in Newark, lead pipes, so on. And we have had issues here in Orange where I think there's a state protocol. If Suez goes in and they dig up and they find a lead pipe, the person has to change the pipe. In light of all of this legislation coming about, that they were able to secure money for people who were not able to pay that bill, because sometimes it could be to the tune of $10,000. Is that going to be extended throughout the state?
So the state is working on putting a funding plan together, but there is already funding that's uncommitted in the Water Environmental Infrastructure Fund, and we have started an application process to secure some of those funds. We're still analyzing the exact number and doing some math, basically. We don't know exactly how many of the lines are old lines, how many of them have been replaced, but we're also talking about how we can do it, and part of the money would be a grant, and the other portion of the money would be done through a special assessment against the property paid over a number of years.
Is there a way, you don't know until you know, is there a way to tell how many houses are,
Well, we know we have approximately 6,400 connections.
okay?
We've been through that. Obviously, we have permits that need to be analyzed because several of the service line, when you replace a service line, it requires a permit. So we can look and see how many of the service lines have been replaced, when, and with what type of material. And we can gauge some, measure there. But really, I think you have to assume that the vast majority of these lines have not been replaced. So we haven't come up with any, red flags. We put out a statement. I'll reiterate what it is. Our water is tested far more frequently than many of our neighboring municipalities. We do tests multiple times a week. We also randomly test at the point of consumption over 50 randomly selected locations per month. And we started doing that a few years ago when the first Flint crisis was announced. So to date, all of those tests show that we're fully compliant with both the state and federal standards, both at the point of distribution, which means coming out of our treatment plant, and at the point of consumption, which means, and when I say consumption, I don't mean we're going into the valve outside in the road. I mean, we're actually going into the house and taking a water sample from the tap. So far, we have not seen any elevated lead levels or any lead levels that are outside or would be in violation of local, state, or federal requirements. And those requirements are exceptionally stringent. So, but even with that, we're addressing on a proactive basis through our applications to the Environmental Infrastructure Trust Fund. And we'll be having discussions about this actually with DEP tomorrow. I have a meeting in Trenton at 2. So we're addressing the issue to come up with a plan so that we're not put in the position that some of our neighboring communities have been put in. And I think we'll come up with a reasonable plan and a reasonable financial plan to approach it.
But we have had that issue where they have gone in, found a lead pipe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and people are not prepared. That's why.
Absolutely. And so everyone's aware, right? Just because you have a lead pipe doesn't mean you have elevated lead levels
Right.
in your water. Most of the lead pipes are lined, they're usually lined with zinc. Sometimes they're lined with a combination of zinc and copper. And we put corrosion inhibitors in our water specifically for the purpose of making sure that the water's pH level is stabilized. It's an elevated pH level that actually eats away at the lining of a lead pipe and raises the lead levels in the water. So we're very cognizant of our treatment plan. We test it both in the beginning and at the end, which not very many people do. But I think from a proactive standpoint, because of the age of the infrastructure, we're going to put a plan in place and an execution plan.
And then finally, just let Captain Bozier know that we're still thinking about him, and we need an update from him. And tell his wife we're bringing our dogs over, more importantly. And I just wanted to let everybody know that I attend St. James A&E, and we're having revival starting tomorrow through the end of the week. So if you're available, please come by St. James in Newark. And finally, my bereavement to the Kroon family on the loss of their matriarch today. Thank you.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Council President, I'll be very brief also. Through you to the business administrator, I want to talk about or find out if our police department has a special victims unit in place, and if something does happen where a lady happens to need help, have the police officers been trained to help her, to get her to the hospital if she needs to get to the hospital?
Have you been reading my mail?
What? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So the only reason I say that is I got an email at the end of last week that the county prosecutor's office is requiring the reinstitution of exactly some of the things that you're talking about. So I don't know the time frame. I still have to have a meeting with the police command as well as the municipal court director because some of it's going to be housed there.
Okay.
But there are 2 programs that they apparently want to bring back. Both are victim central, or centralized, focused. So if you give me until October 1st, I'll give you a written report as to what they're suggesting and how we're going to do it.
Okay, cool. And also, I wanted to speak about the active training for, I guess, our municipal buildings. And it's important to me because as time goes forward, we're always hearing about a mass shooting. And if we could get something in place, like we could have things posted, like you are here in this building, if something happens, you go to this place. And as Councilwoman Williams said, with the prime point, we can find out who's actually in the building, if we could have team captains, if we could do something like that. So if we could meet like as soon as possible regarding that. And I'd like to say congratulations to the court, our Orange Municipal Court. They received an email from Judge Grant, who is the administrator for the courts. And he wrote a very nice email about our courts in Orange, and I'll just read a little bit of it. And he says, "Thank you, Court Administrator Moss, for the leadership and assistance in rolling out this new protocol." The new protocol is the multi-language protocol where we have people in the courts who can interpret the various languages. So Judge Grant was thanking our courts for doing that, and I thank the court administrators and to the BA for like going forth with this protocol. He closed with the efforts to communicate more effectively with LEP users on the operation of our municipal courts, advance the important mission and vision of our court system. Again, thank you for your feedback and willingness to lead this effort in your court. So I want to say thanks again to the court and congratulations for getting that information from him. Also want to announce for Councilwoman Summers that her meeting is going to be held on October 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Artful Bean Cafe, which is at 400 South Jefferson Street in the city of Orange Township. And that is it. Thank you so much, Council President.
You're welcome. I'm gonna be very brief. Mr. Mays, could you come up for a second? Pooper scooper signs, are they in?
We normally have a couple of those laying around.
I think
yeah.
you're depleted. I think some were supposed to be ordered per your deputy
Where you wanted it?
on Cleveland Street, on right by the abandoned building, across from Cleveland Street School. We need a couple. And just put some at random on Washington Street, because a lot of people walking their dogs, but they're not pooper scooping. So we need that to start happening.
Okay.
All right. Also, I just want to reiterate that everybody should come out. Marty, you have your tickets for the 150th anniversary. Friday night is meet and greet. And Saturday, we have a lot of activities. So I expect to see all of you Orangites there. Y'all live and breathe orange. I want to see you out there supporting. So I'm going to take names while I'm there. And some of you will be walking in the parade. I know Councilman Jackson said he will be walking in the parade. So we expect.
That's only if the new costume is in.
And Councilman Johnson, you can join the parade, Johnson, you can join the
I'm a
parade
Viking.
also.
I'm a Viking, I'm not a tornado.
You can pretend to be one. Also, the North Ward will have their North Ward meeting on September the 26th, 6 to 8 p.m. at Crown and Cross Church on Thomas Boulevard. There's a new church over there. We will be meeting. There's some changes that's coming to the North Ward that I want to make everybody aware of, and so you're not surprised. So we will be meeting 68 on September the 26th, which is next Thursday, at Crown and Cross Church on Thomas Boulevard. You can't miss it. The sign is right there. And Mr. Hartwick, as I traveled through, remember before we talked about a mailbox in the police department?
You mean for
For people
pills?
to deposit their mail? I just saw a beautiful one. It was painted white in, where was I? Belleville. Belleville. So are we ever gonna do that? It was mounted in the police, painted nice and pretty, and you can go anytime and put your old medicines in there. So
Did it
just
have an
slide
RX on it? Did it have an RX painted on it?
No, it just said deposit your
Okay.
medicines.
I'll see what I can do with Mr. Mays and Director Warren.
Because maybe we can get the post office to donate us a mailbox. I'll help paint it if we get the mailbox. And-
You can do it through Walgreens, through their foundation. They'll
I
do,
know.
okay.
And I think that's about all I have. Oh, who was that brought up the safety? I thought at the police department, we were moving the scanners to the front door.
No, we're moving the scanners, you mean the Prime Point scanners?
So that anybody going into Orange Police would have to go through metal detectors.
Oh, you mean the weapons detectors?
Right.
Right. No, what we're doing is, in the capital budget, we're gonna order the extension to the front door. In the meantime, we're working on a written security plan for the building that places the security screening down in the small vestibule before the inner doors to the building. And we're changing the inner doors to the building so that they are button operated behind the desk, and then that desk has to be manned.
And also the parking lot on the side by, is that Wallace Street? Is that where the parking lot is, at the police station?
In William Street?
William Street. The officer asking that that be more secure so that people can't walk through there at night.
I don't know why the officers are asking for these things. They need to go through their chain of command.
Okay. I think that's what's not happening, so I figured I'll bring it up and,
Yeah, I mean, that's what they should be told. They need to go through their chain of command.
but
I
can we
have,
just see?
there was, in 2014, there was money put aside in the ordinance to do the securing of the gated lot. The plan that came in far exceeded the money that was put in the ordinance. So now what they really need is a gate arm at the entrance.
Off of William Street.
Right. Or
I
a
don't think
sliding
what they're
gate.
requesting requires a lot of money. It
Pardon?
just- I don't, what they're requesting, I don't think it requires a lot
No, the
of money.
plan that they had put in place for the 2014 ordinance was over $300,000.
No, but
It
I'm
was
saying,
new fencing, it was new grading for the lot, it was camera security, it was card access to the lot. So when you added all that stuff up, which clearly nobody did before they put it in the ordinance, it far exceeded the amount that was set aside in the ordinance for that project. So, and I have no problem securing the lot. I've been talking to the command about it for a year. But
Because
I
I
have
don't
to
think
have
they-
funds in place to do it.
I
And
know
it's a
you-
capital
you-
project.
yeah, but you're talking about an elaborate plan. In the meantime, we need to just be proactive and see how we can lock those gates and stop the residents from walking through the lot before somebody gets hurt. So that's all I'm asking. You don't have to spend 300,000. Maybe it's just a matter of having them go to Home Depot and get a lock and put on the gate and open it and close it, or certain entrances, so there's one entrance and one exit. That's all.
Well, the gates that go out to Canfield Street can't be locked for fire purposes. And the gates that come in off of Park Street can't be locked. The only secure portion of the parking lot is that portion in which the entrance is on William Street, and the proposed solution to that is to put an armed gate there. And that's a relatively inexpensive solution.
I'm just gonna say this,
It's
and I
still a capital
apologize,
project.
but I think a life is worth more than that. That's my 2 cents. We're here
I
to
don't
save
think
lives,
that it
yeah.
has anything to do with that. It has to
No,
do
I'm
with
just saying, I'm just saying,
appropriate
I'm just saying.
budgetary planning.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I think a life is more valuable than we need to figure out a way to secure that lot for them before somebody gets hurt. And then we all be at the funeral, seeing how sorry we are. Let's prevent it before it happens. That's all I'm saying. And with that, we will move on.
There are no ordinances on second reading. Ordinance on first introduction, 36-2019, an ordinance to amend the code of the City of Orange Township, Chapter 200, entitled Vehicle and Traffic, Section 200-10.2, Residential Parking Permit and Prohibited Parking During Certain Hours. Ivory Court, sponsored by Councilmember Harold J. Johnson, Jr. Is there a motion to adopt on first?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Coley, second by Councilman Jackson on the motion. Seeing none, roll call. Councilman Coley?
Yes.
Councilman Jackson?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Yes.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Yes.
Council President Eason?
Yes.
37-2019, an ordinance to amend the code of the City of Orange Township, Chapter 200, entitled Vehicles and Traffic, Section 200-10.2, Residential Parking Permit and Prohibited Parking During Certain Hours. Merle Court, sponsored by Councilmember Tensier Eason. Is there a motion to adopt on first?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Coley, second by Councilwoman Wooten. On the motion? Seeing none, roll call. Councilman Coley?
Yes.
Councilman Jackson?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Yes.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Yes.
Council President Eason.
Yes.
The public hearing and final reading will be Tuesday, October 15th, 2019, for the two ordinances just passed on first. Consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. 184, 2019, and 307, 2019 has been postponed to the next meeting. Are there any items which to be removed?
Council President,
Yes, Councilwoman Williams.
322, 2019.
Any others?
Yes, Madam Clerk, through you, through the Council President, 325, 2019,
Okay.
and 326, 2019.
Any others? The consent agenda consists of 320, 321, 323, 324, 327, 328, and 329. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Move.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Williams, second by Councilwoman Wooten. On the motion? Seeing none, roll call. Councilman Coley?
Yes.
Councilman Jackson?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Yes.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Yes.
Council President Eason.
Yes.
322, 2019. A resolution adopting the calendar year 2019 municipal budget, January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. Is there a motion to adopt?
Move.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Williams, second by Councilman Jackson. On the motion? Seeing none, roll call. Councilman Coley?
Yes.
Councilman Jackson?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Yes.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Yes.
Council President Eason.
Yes.
325-2019, a resolution awarding a 3-year contract for municipal refuse and recycle collections for the city of Orange to Joseph Seminski, Inc., 160 James Avenue, Jersey City, New Jersey, 07306, commencing October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020, in an amount not to exceed $2,944,200. Is there a motion to adopt?
Moved by Councilwoman Williams.
Second.
Second by Councilman Jackson.
On the motion?
On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Johnson.
Council President, I just want to reiterate to the administration one more time, we got 3 years to deal with this company. Please hold them to the highest standard of whatever's written up in that contract. Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Councilman Coley?
Yes.
Councilman Jackson?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Yes.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Yes.
Council President Eason.
Yes.
326-2019, a resolution to approve the corrective action plan for the calendar year 2018. Is there a motion to adopt?
Move.
Second.
Councilwoman Williams and Councilwoman Wooten.
On the motion? Seeing none, roll call. Councilman Coley?
Yes.
Councilman Jackson?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson Jr.?
Yes.
Councilwoman Summers Johnson is absent. Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wooten?
Yes.
Council President Eason.
Yes.
Is there any new business?
Council President?
Yes, Councilman.
I just have a quick question. To the clerk, the financial documents, are they going up on our website?
Yes.
Oh, so all the documents that, the budget, the user-friendly,
everything's on there.
that's all there on our, on the council's website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
the corrective action plan gonna be posted to, Madam Clerk?
Soon as she send me the electronic version, yes.
It's already been sent, it's in your mail.
Okay, thank
And
you.
just for the record, it's also all up on the city website.
Can you
Except
just,
for
okay.
the changed user-friendly budget, and that'll be up tomorrow.
So everything that was mentioned that wasn't up there, we are current on all documents, with the exception of what you just said.
Yeah, the credit report was put up there today.
Okay.
The amended budget was put up. The audit was put up. All that stuff was put up over the last 10 days.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any pending business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move. Second.
Motion by Councilman Coley, second by Councilman Johnson Jr. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned 9:32 PM.